So today we are here in the studio with Carolyn, and we're just going to have a chat really about the evolution of an artist and how Carolyn arrived at the point of being a painter. So, do you remember the very first time you did something creative in your life?
Yes, it was probably when I was at school. No, it was before then actually. I had a grandmother and a mother who taught me how to knit and how to do embroidery. So that's probably when it started.
So there, you are from a house of knitters.
Knitters and embroiderers, and we used to make our own clothes. So yes, I'm from an era that darning, used to darn socks. So yes, from an era of mending and sewing and knitting.
And do you remember the experience of that and the emotion of that when you were sitting, being taught and knitting with your mother and grandmother?
I suppose thinking about it now, and I hadn't thought about it until just now, it was just something that we did. It was a family thing. It was a together thing. And it was being interactive and with these women in my life.
And then when you went to school, was that art and craft and just making a prominent part of your kind of childhood, or did you focus on other things as a child at school?
At school, I was very sporty. So not terribly academic. I could do academia, but I was very sporty. And I suppose my main thing again was needlework. I did both needlework O-level and A-level. And I used to make patchwork and again embroidery.
I didn't know needlework was a thing you could do as an exam.
Yes, it was back in those days. And I loved it. And I was good at it as well.
So the items that you made for your O-level and A-level, do you still have them?
No, we had them for a long time. One of the things I made was a patchwork velvet tea cosy, which my mother used proudly for years, but I think it just disintegrated actually. But no. Oh, actually I do. I have upstairs. My mother handed them to me about 10 years ago. I'd forgotten all about this. I've got some patchwork pieces, because in those days you used to wrap them around cardboard and they were hexagons, because the typical English patchwork is hexagons, and I've still got them made from fabric about dresses and items of clothing that I made.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you still got those?
I have.
Oh, they could appear.
They could appear,
They could appear in something. So you did that. You did your O and A-level embroidery. And then what happened next?
Well, then I left home and not a lot happened then. And then I had children, and I had a neighbour who was also arty crafty, and we went to patchwork quilt classes when I lived in East Molesey, and we did that for a number of years, and again, loved it.
So do you remember the moment that paint kind of entered the discussion and the conversation?
Yes, I do. I had another girlfriend who knew that I loved all this type of thing, and she asked me if I would be willing to go and do a watercolour class with her, and we found this teacher who worked out of a village hall, and we used to go and do watercolour classes, and again I loved it.
And you were still doing the embroidery and everything at that point?
Still doing the patchwork quilt making, and I also learned how to make sugar flowers and wedding cakes as well.
You're very versatile. You could decorate an entire household and run a wedding.
Yeah, I could.
And then paint the scene.
Well, I couldn't do that then, because the watercolours were quite a prescribed way of teaching. So she'd give you something like an onion to paint and teach you how to paint it. And what I've learnt since is, in fact, watercolour is one of the most difficult mediums to use and to master. But she did a good job of teaching us.
Yeah, so she taught you the process.
Yes, and how to look and how to build volume on a two-dimensional piece of paper, basically, and how to draw it and how to get that sense of roundness or volume in an object.
And so you did that for a while, and then how did you move on to the next stage of oils?
Well, then my eldest daughter was going off to university, and I found that really difficult. I was in quite a lot of grief actually for that whole of her A-level year, because I realised that my job, because I was a full-time mum, was basically disappearing off to university, and I didn't know who I was. So I realised I was having a bit of an identity crisis, and I needed to reinvent myself. And a local friend suggested that I go and do the Access course at Farnham University, which was a part-time course. So I did. And the reason I got in was I remember making these portfolios of photographs of all the wedding cakes and the sugar flowers I'd done, and then I pulled out all the fabrics and the photographs of all the patchwork quilts that I'd done, used that in my interview and got in. And then at the end of that year, the
So an Access course is a bit like a foundation course?
Yes, it's the foundation course for mature students or for any returner to higher education. And it was 2 days a week. And at the end of that year, our tutor said to us, so what do you all want to do now? Because at Farnham in those days, and this is, 2008-9, you had, if you did the Access course, you had an automatic entry into any of the degree courses that Farnham put on. So it was a toss-up between interior architecture, because my husband used to run a property development company, or the fine art. And fine art was what I chose. And I always knew I wanted to go into painting. And
Was that a real dilemma? Was that a real dilemma? Because you could see that you could contribute to your household by doing the interior architecture. Was it a dilemma?
Yes,
a
it
real
was.
Kind of friction.
It
struggle?
was, but my husband said to me, well, the thing is, by the time you've graduated, I'm probably going to be retiring, and therefore there's not going to be a relevance for it. So just do something for you. Do it for your own enjoyment. So that's how I chose to do the fine art degree. And what was interesting though about fine art degrees then, and I suppose now, is the fact that they don't teach you painting. They don't teach you how to draw. You're expected to go and find it out for yourself. And I remember one of the teachers saying to me, well, Carolyn, you need to go and break the rules. And I said, but I don't know the rules to break.
It's always a problem if you haven't actually... Yeah, I suppose you had learnt some of the rules by doing the watercolour course, but beyond that...
No, and I think also, as a mature student, I realised also that I didn't have the access to the playing that I think the young ones coming straight from school and doing their A-levels, we'd lost, I think, that ability to know how to play, and we had to re-find that. And I think that's possibly what they meant when they said break the rules. We sort of had to refine the rules and how we wanted to break them. And you get yourself, as a mature student and as an adult, you get yourself caught, I think, within this is how you should do things, and this is what things ought to look like, and this is what art is, and it's the old masters. Actually, it's not about that, and we had to refine that.
It's very difficult, isn't it, when we're quite evolved now in our processes. We've seen so many different types of art evolve over centuries, like you say, from the old masters, Cubism, Renaissance, everything. We've got so much coming at us that, how do you find you? How do you find your unique voice in that noise?
Well, I found it very difficult, actually. And there were times during my degree when I would literally want to cry because I just couldn't do this. And I had to learn to just sit and think about this, and I can do this, and how am I going to do that, and find that way through. And one of the things I did learn doing that degree course is actually that I prefer in some respects contemporary art now. I find it more interesting and more challenging, I think, in how you look at it and how you view it. So, but the process of painting and to where I am now has basically taken the last 14 years since I finished my degree.
And you have an absolute love of colour. Was that immediate? Did that come out immediately then?
No. It's always been there, but that understanding again has been part of this 14-year long process of allowing myself to know that that's actually what drives me, and that actually when I'm out in the landscape or when I'm looking at anything, whether it's fabric, textiles, it's the colour that is making me feel, well, whatever emotion it is that's getting me, it's the colour that's doing it.
That's the communication route
Yes.
to you. So you're responding to the colour.
Yes, it's an emotional
world.
response, and it can be quite a strong emotional response as well. And when I'm painting, I've learned that how I feel about something is the right response. And if something isn't working, then I have to find what's the colour combination that is making me sing.
Yeah, because when you're painting, it is all about balance and the last mark that is the game changer, isn't it? And for you, that's about the colour palette that you're choosing. So that colour palette that you started with, what did that look like back 14 years ago?
Various things. Interestingly, I've got a painting upstairs which has got a very dark background, almost black, and the predominant colour is lime green. So thinking about it now, that obsession, that delight, I think, in lime green has actually always been there against this very dark background.
You love lime green, don't you?
I do.
So talk to us a bit about, so we have the table in front of us, that is the palette that you've created for the painting that is going on here. Tell me about how you create, because we've got oil paints, pastel sticks, all your brushes, palette knives. How do you conceive the colour, and how do you then start to mix that colour and make that colour? Because you have quite a unique way. It's a large palette.
It is a large palette. I find working small quite difficult. I've tried it and I find it quite tricky. So I definitely prefer working large scale. And I think one of the things that I like about the scale is the fact that I can get into it. I can sort of move around with it. And I like to be able to move around the canvases and move the arms and just get into it rather than being constricted like this. And at the moment I'm working particularly with these angel trumpets, which I have found to be just the most wonderful thing to draw. And there's something terribly feminine about them, and I think I'm very interested at the moment in the whole concept of embracing my own femininity and actually finding joy in the fact that I'm now an older, mature woman, and that I don't want to hide that anymore. And there's something about these that is just speaking to me at the moment about it. So they start off by being pink, and it's then what works, I suppose, with all those different colours. And there's no doubt that I'm very driven and drawn to a very spring type palette. I like warm colours. I'm not particularly, I don't like cold colours very much. So I start with the colour, and then I use oil bars a lot. And if I like a particular oil bar and I want to make...
So these are the oil bars.
These are the oil bars here. And for instance, if you look at this,
look at that one.
I know, if you look at this one, I might then think to myself, well, you know, if I want to create that in a much larger area, well, how do I make that colour? So I then experiment with how do I make that colour? So
you have your colour mixing
I do.
Bible.
So this is the colour mixing Bible that was recommended to me. So they have here, for instance, what's that? That's sort of reds, I suppose. And then there's a colour chart here to give you an idea of what you can use to mix up and create that colour. So then I'll start making them, and then I get awfully carried away by what it looks like, and it goes on, and then it just all goes from there, really.
And these palettes,
Yeah,
do you have one per painting?
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're like a plastic with a piece of paper over the top.
Yeah.
And you keep them?
They stay around for a while, and then they get a little bit crusty. So they just get thrown away after a while.
They disintegrate.
Well, what can happen is I'll put another piece on top, and then they tend to pile up, and then, as I say, they just get a bit difficult to work on, so then they have to go.
Because it does eventually harden.
It does.
The oil.
It does.
And that's interesting. So you've done the oil, which is a mixture of pastel and oil paint. And what tools are your favourite?
My hands.
Your hands. So if you were doing this, you would be using your hands.
Yes, and because I don't like oil paint on my hands, I do use gloves.
Okay.
So, and of course that also allows me, by putting the glove on, it almost gives me the freedom to not then worry about how it's getting underneath my nails. And then I'll very often just pick it up and then rub it on and scrape through it. And I will use paintbrushes, but more and more and more I'm using my hands and a rag and the oil bar.
So these marks that are here have been made by your finger?
No, these have been made by, so this is thick paint that goes on, and then by using the oil bar and cutting through it, you get these marks.
And these squiggly marks as well?
Yeah, they were done by using the oil bar, going through very thick paint.
Yes, because I don't know whether that's appreciated on screen, but this is not a flat surface, it's quite textured surface. So some of them are popping out and some of them are back into the...
And that's quite deliberate.
Yeah, this is... when you get up close, the texture is just exquisite, the way you've created. And so I was fascinated by, the tools that you're using and the way that you're creating that. So as you start to process this, do you have, I know you have a methodology around bringing it off the page and getting some space around you, but how do you know you're reaching a point when you're nearly finished?
Because you look at it, and I think I've thought about this a lot, and I think you get to the point when you look at something and you don't know where to put something, or you just look at it and know that it doesn't need any more, and that's when you know it's finished.
And how long does that generally take? So a canvas of this size, how long would you generally be working on it?
All in all, this has probably taken me nearly 2 weeks, but this has changed many times. So I take paint off and put it back on, and I will take whole areas out and then redo them. So looking at this bit here, this is very thin, watered down paint, and I like the fact that that gives you a sense of it receding into the background and then bringing things forward. But if something isn't working, I'm not afraid to literally take the whole thing off and then redo it. So you should be able to know yourself. If you're confident enough in what you're doing, you can take something off and redo it, and actually it should be better than what was there before. So don't get too hung up on liking something because it might not fit in with anything else.
Yeah, and do you leave it? Do you kind of like go, right, I'm going to just walk away from that canvas for a bit?
Yes.
Just leave it for a bit?
Yes.
And then you'll get another one because you've got room, you've got quite big walls.
Yes,
so.
I'll often have, with this size, I'll have 2 going at the same time. And I'll also work on paper as well. So one of the things somebody asked me about is, do I do drawings and sketchings beforehand? No, not very often. I'll have photographs that I work from. And I may sometimes, if I'm working through a particular shape, I might draw it out in a sketchbook, but I don't particularly work from sketches. Everything gets worked out on the canvas.
So your emotional narrative and life is just happening here.
Yes.
Yeah, in front of you.
Yes.
So you've got all that emotion just going straight from your hands
Yes.
straight into here. Yes, absolutely fascinating. So how long more do you think you've got? How many more weeks do you think you'll be working on this?
This one's finished.
This is finished.
This one's finished. So there's another one going on at the moment. This one though took about 2 weeks. I don't work on stuff all day every day. I'll come in, maybe spend an hour, 3 hours, but because it is oil paint, sometimes you actually have to let it dry to a certain extent.
And do you then seal it, or is it that's it?
That's it.
Yeah, you don't put any varnish or anything over the top. You don't finish it off. It's just that's it. And have you ever tried doing that, finishing it?
No.
No. Sections of it.
No.
Oh, there you are. There's an idea.
I haven't.
Some people do. With oil paint, some people varnish, their finished. That's why you have, at the Royal Academy, you have varnishing day.
No.
Because they go in and varnish their pieces. And I suppose old masters are varnished, and you often see people saying, oh, yeah, they're cleaning the varnish because it's discoloured or whatever. There you are.
No, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to have to look into that because I wouldn't know why you'd want to varnish a painting.
I don't know either. I'm not an artist.
And I think also you need to leave them to dry to a certain extent before you varnish them as well, don't you?
And I think that's why they have that varnishing day principle, because obviously you've done the painting and it's had to have, for oils, a considerable amount of time. I mean, it's months, isn't it, before they are all completely dry. I do remember a client once commissioning an oil painting, and they wanted it within like a couple of months, and I was like, well, it won't be dry. You can't speed up an artist. No. It's just, the principle of you can't rush an artist, and the paint won't let you anyway. So these large ones are destined for anywhere at the moment. Do they have an outcome?
This one, and there's another one. So this one I've called Lilac Joy, and there's another one called Cerulean Joy. They've both been entered into an open submission.
Okay.
So we're just waiting to see.
Wait to see. That's kind of part of the process, isn't it? Is as an artist, you see your year or 2 years ahead of you, and they're not quick. You have to be planning and thinking what you're going to submit for, and you've got some on exhibition at the moment as well. You've got 3 on exhibition at the moment, and that process of organisation. Do you have quite an organised practice, do you think?
No.
Wasn't a leading question.
No. Sometimes I think about that and think, should I? And then I think the thing is, because when I'm painting, so when I come into the studio, I have to sort of arrive in the studio, and I always put music on. And I've thought about this and thought about why. And it is a distraction, but it's a distraction in that it sort of clears my head of anything that's going through it, anything that's worrying me or anxious making. And I've realised that the music actually allows me to have a rhythm. So there's a rhythm that's going through, and there's almost like a dancing that goes on, and that when I'm standing in front of the painting, there's the emotion of both whatever I'm listening to and the emotion of the painting, and it all becomes one thing. So the thought that I've then got to actually sit down in front of a computer and think about the logistics of getting paintings out there. Okay, I have to sort of stop and deliberately sit and do that. It's not something that I enjoy doing. This is the fun part.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. But it is important to do your administration.
It is.
I know you do set aside a particular time separately, don't you? And you do treat your painting practice in the way of someone doing a job, because you do it regularly, you turn up in your studio regularly. It's not a random act, it is a professional approach to...
Yes, I have to blank it out in my diary. So I make sure that days in the week that there is space put aside, and clearly things sometimes have to change. You know, it's you put things in, and life sometimes happens, but I do try to hold that and make the family know that actually this is studio time. This is what I do.
And do you still return to study? Do you still go back and do classes?
Yes, I do. I have worked now since 2013 with Emily Ball, who works down in Partridge Green, and she, in fact, and she has another tutor there called Nick Bodymeat. They've probably taught me whatever I know about painting and paint, and the art of this is I've learned through them. And I still go, partly to do with the fact that actually what it does is it puts whole days aside, and that's what I do for 2, 3, 5 days at a time, and I can concentrate on that and nothing else. And I'm with other artists, because it can be quite lonely sometimes being in here all by myself. Sometimes it's great fun, but sometimes you want to be with other artists, either talking about it or just being there. So yes, I do like doing classes.
Studio time is important.
Yes.
And I know that they've been incredibly helpful.
Yes.
And you've done some residencies as well there, haven't you?
Yes, and in fact I'm finding these days that in fact the residencies have become more important than the classes. I've sort of got to a point where I don't need them so much, but I do like the residencies, because it's 5 days of just being in a studio with 6 other artists and nothing else is happening, just that. And that intense period of working and constantly thinking about it and talking about it with other people is where stuff shifts, stuff changes.
Yeah, you just give yourself the space. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's actually fantastic.